I'd like to welcome Amy Joyce Hastings and Graham Cantwell. Well, first of all, it's great that you could be here. It really means a lot to the Luxembourg cinema-going public. And certainly for the British and Irish film season as well. It really gives us a boost. As you can see, we're having this recorded as well. So after we've had an exchange and we try to go through a little bit of the making of the movie, we'll throw the questions and answers open to the floor. So when you'd like to ask a question, put up your hand and we'll get a mic to you. You wrote the script, but could you tell us in your own words how the story, how did the idea reach fruition? I'll go and grab a second mic.
Sure. Well, basically, what happened was I had been wanting to make a film set in the world of the film industry for quite a while, because I teach a lot of young filmmakers and actors and stuff. And when you're coming up against people at that age, and I remember being that age, being a very young, pretentious filmmaker, and there's a lot of comic value to be taken from characters like that. And I'd always wanted to make a film set in that world. And then I was on my way into a screening, a BAFTA event in a car, and I had a couple of friends who are agents and another actor and a writer, and Amy was in the car, and she was talking about how she'd been for a few auditions and how she'd gotten down to the final two but hadn't actually gotten the job, and she said,
I'm like the callback queen.
yeah, and basically that's where the idea for the film came from. I took what was happening with Amy and turned it into Kate's journey and combined that with the story of the younger filmmakers, and tried to develop a narrative that wove the two threads together, if you know what I mean.
Sometimes the questions I'm asking, I don't know myself whether Graham or Amy are going to answer these, because, as I mentioned at the beginning, they wear different hats as well, production and director, as well as writing, etc. So can you tell us a little bit about the making of the film, maybe Amy, from like where you shot it, when you shot it, and when you finished the post-production. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, this is the second screening. The first screening was at the Galway Film Fleadh in July, in the sweltering heat in July.
True, it was 34 degrees. Hottest day in Irish history, I think. So, because it was low budget, we probably took a longer period of time making it. We initially started in April and May. We did 5 6-day week shoots in London up to 2011. And then we did a rough cut. We didn't shoot the whole film. We didn't shoot the beginning or the ending because we didn't have the money, because it was a lot bigger budget towards the end of the movie. So we shot the main bulk of it, and then we did some pickups in August, and then we waited till the following January, which is when we shot all the stuff which was in Snowdonia and Wales, the Prince of Chaos footage, and then we had to cut that together so that we could screen it in the BFI for the finale of the film. And then we also decided we didn't like the opening scene we had, so we went back and shot a new opening, wrote and shot. So we wrapped in February 2012. So we probably did 7 weeks filming altogether, but spread over 10 months.
And the post-production?
Yeah, the post-production, we had our first rough cut in June 2012, which was about 20 minutes longer than the film you just saw. And I mean, we knew there was a lot to be cut from that. So we did in Leicester Square Theatre. One of our executive producers is Martin Witts, who runs the Leicester Square Theatre in London, and he's a big theatre producer, but he really helped us out and supported us with the film. So we did a rough cut first screening in London in June 2012. We got feedback on that, and we paired about 7 minutes, and then we took it to Ireland and did a rough cut screening, also in the New Theatre in Ireland, because Graham's last collaborator, Anthony Fox, runs that theatre. So we did a screening there for a lot of Irish comedy writers and people in the industry. Got feedback, and then we cut about 13 more minutes. So then once we cut it, there was another few months of grading, scoring, sound mixing, all of that. So we literally finished it 2 days before the screening in July, in mid-July.
And after that screening, this is the next public screening. So we're really honoured, delighted that you could be here. Can you tell us really a little bit about the approach to casting? Because, like, Mark Killeen has done a great job, and there's Vicky Michelle in there. And there are other actors that you would know, and some that you wouldn't know. So, for the benefit of the Luxembourg audience here, if you could tell us a little bit about, again, I'm not sure which of you is going to answer this, but how you went about the casting.
Well, in the UK, there's a website called Spotlight, which advertises auditions for films, and we put out a breakdown for. Everything is cast through Spotlight. So we put out a breakdown on Spotlight for 12 roles in the film. And we put the breakdown out on a Thursday night at 11 p.m. And by 4 a.m., we had 1,800 submissions from actors.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
And we only sent it out to agents. We didn't even send it to individual actors. We literally only sent the bulletin to agents. So this was agents up until 4 o'clock in the morning submitting their clients. And we had to whittle it down within a couple of days.
So did you close it then at 4 o'clock in the morning?
No. We left it go, and it got up to like 2,500 actors submitted. Huh? Yeah. And yeah, I mean, the numbers were just so huge. We were like, what are we going to do? So we had to whittle it down by headshot and by show reel. And
135 auditions.
yeah, we could literally only, over 3 days, we could only see 135 people. So we whittled it down to 135, and we saw all of those people. And we were just bowled over by the quality of actors that came in. And it was such a difficult job to whittle it down even further to the actual actors that we wanted. But Mark was one of the few people, our lead, who was very close to not being brought in because his headshot wasn't great. But Amy saw something.
Yeah, there was 14 slots for Vincent. We were going to see 14 actors for Vincent, and Mark was in the final 20. And there was 4 of us casting, so we each had 1 wild card. And because Mark didn't have an online show reel, and his headshot at the time was a really old one, and it wasn't like what his material's like now, but all the other 3 were like gonna give him the chop between the 20 and the 14, and I said, he's my wild card, we're bringing him in. So, and then once he walked in the room, I think everyone was like, you were right.
But Mark has more a history, and if you were to typecast somebody like Mark, it'd be much more in the gangster role, and he's appeared in Dark Knight Rises and The Sweeney as well.
Both since the Callback Queen. Yeah.
And the romantic comedy is quite different.
Yeah, exactly. I had an idea that with the male lead, that we didn't want to do that really stereotypical, very sort of Nancy boy, stuttery Hugh Grant of the 1990s rom-com male lead, but go for a real alpha male, virile rom-com lead and just try something different there, which I think really works for the character of Vincent. So that's why Mark. We saw a lot of American actors for that role, and that was what we were going, that direction. And we saw a couple of Scottish guys, because I was thinking Gerard Butler, that sort of type. But when Mark kind of came in, he stole the role.
You mentioned about a lot of Irish actors in this as well. And was there like another sort of message, not a subliminal message, but another message there about there being so many Irish actors in the UK, in London?
Yeah, I mean, like we said, we only put out breakdowns for 12 roles, and I think there's 50 or 45 credited actors in the film. So a lot of it was cast from actors either Graham or myself had worked with before. So there is, I mean, it's called the Murphyad, the Irish, the Irish Mafia, yeah, the Murphyad. It's the Irish kind of theatre and film community in London, which is huge. In fact, especially now with the collapse of the Celtic Tiger, everybody's in London. I have more of my acting friends in London than back home, really.
I'm going to ask you a little bit about how you got to come to where you are now in a minute. But I'd like to ask another sort of follow-up question to what I just asked a minute ago. I asked about the casting, and now I'm going to ask about the soundtrack, because I think that's quite an interesting story in itself.
Yeah, well, a friend of ours, Danny O'Donoghue from The Script, he's the frontman for The Script. I asked him if he had any leads on good bands, good music that we could use in the soundtrack for the film, and he put me on to a guy called Philip McGee, who's a sound engineer in Dublin, and he had engineered The Script's early albums, and he had engineered like Aslan and people like that, but he was also engineering for a lot of up-and-coming Irish bands. So he basically, I got in touch with him and I started sending him rough cuts of scenes and saying, have you got any music that'll suit this? And he started sending me over reams and reams of music, and it was just incredible. And most of it, I don't know what it is about him, his ear is so tuned to what we needed. We slotted it into a scene and it just worked perfectly. Like it would slot in. And some of the bands, when he brought them to us, they weren't really big, and they've just since then started to go through the roof. One of the bands was called 21 Demands, and then they lost the bass player and became Codaline. So they've literally skyrocketed now, but back when they were 21 Demands, we got a song off them. But because the bass player... The song's called London. It's one of the main tracks in it. But because of the fact that the band members changed, they haven't actually released that song. So at the moment, the only place you can hear it is in this film, on the soundtrack of the film. So we were pretty proud of that. And some of the other bands that we worked with, the Fallen Drakes and stuff, they're on the cusp of being huge. But it was just through Philip and Danny that we were able to get access to them at a point where they wanted the exposure as much as we wanted the music, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it was a really nice little relationship that we developed with Philip, that he was able to give us that music.
Okay, well, I think we'll wrap it up there, and I'd like to say a really sincere thanks to Amy and to Graham. It was great to see the film and for having you here.